Hi! In this lesson, we'll take a look at how a set of CSS rules, also called style sheets, can be applied to a web page. Let's go to our front-end dev folder and create a subfolder called CSS. This is the place where we store all of our example code for this section. Let's now go into that folder and create a new file called inline.html. I will do that from the editor. Save. Inline HTML. So let's create the usual boilerplate for the file. The body. Okay, and let's create a paragraph in the body. Okay, as we have already seen when learning about HTML, the browser automatically formats and applies a default style to the various semantic markup that it knows about. If we save this file and we open it in the browser, we see that there is some type of automatic formatting in place. The paragraph has a color, the paragraph has some kind of spacing around it, and this is the style that the browser applies automatically. But let's suppose that we want to change this behavior. We want the paragraph text to be red in color. And we can do that in 3 different ways. Let's see them in practice. The first one that we're going to look at is the inline method. So let's go back to our editor and let's style our paragraph. So the attribute style, the one that we are using right now, can be applied to any HTML tag, and it allows us to add one or more CSS declarations that will apply to that specific tag. In this case, we are using the keyword color to address the font color and the value red, since we want it to be colored in red. So let's save, let's go back to the browser, and let's refresh. And we have our paragraph in red. Now let's have a look at the Chrome Inspector. Now below the element panel, or next to it if you are keeping the Chrome Inspector at the bottom of the browser window, you will see another panel with the active tab Styles. This panel lets us see which rules are applied to the selected element. So if we go to the paragraph, if we select the paragraph elements, we can see that there is a rule that is affecting this element. And this rule is applied directly to the element style. So we already know that this is an inline rule. And the rule has only one declaration that says color red. This panel lets us see which rules are applied to the selected element, but it also gives us a complete view of all of the preceding rules that were applied to the element before ours. In this case, we can see that there was a previous rule that was affecting the element, and this rule was applied by the user agent. That means that this is the rule that the browser automatically applies to the paragraph, and that's why the paragraph has a sort of a default formatting. So let's see another way of applying the same rule. So let's go back to the folder and let's copy this file and paste it and call it internal. And then open it. Let's change the title, internal CSS example. Now let's remove the style from our paragraph. And I will show you how you can do the same thing without using the inline style. This time, within the head, let's open a style tag. The style tag basically will allow us to do exactly the same thing that we were doing with the style attribute. But because we are creating the rule within the head of the HTML file, we need to target the element to which the rule will be applied. So we need to write a selector. We'll see the selector in the next video, so I will just introduce them very briefly right now. I'm creating a selector rule that will be applied to all of the paragraph elements in the page. So I'm targeting elements that are called P, the paragraph tag. I'm opening the curly brace to define a declaration block, and within this block I can write the same declaration rules that I was writing inline in the paragraph element. Color red. Every rule must be closed by a semicolon. Now we can save, go back to our folder and open the file with the browser. And we can see that we get exactly the same result. If we open the inspector and we check on the file, we select the paragraph and we see a difference. So now we see that there are no inline styles because the element.style is basically empty, but we have a selector style. And it will tell us where it comes from. It is defined within the same file, the index.html file, at line 9. And if we go to our file, we can indeed see that at line 9 we have our selector rule. And it is exactly as before, color red. Now you can already guess what kind of advantages you get when you define a rule the way we just did now and not inline within the element. And the most obvious advantage that you have is that this rule can be applied to more than one element at the same time, whereas the rule that we were using before was specific to that particular element. If we have, for example, another paragraph in the text, in the document, sorry, we save and we refresh, we will see that that paragraph too gets exactly the same rule applied to it. And this because the rule is targeting all of the paragraph elements in the document. Whereas with the inline style that we were applying before, we should have written the rule on both paragraphs, duplicating the code. The third way of applying CSS rules to a document, and the most widely used, the one that should always be used because it guarantees maximum flexibility and potential for reuse, is the external method. Let's have a look. First, let's go to our file system, duplicate internal, and rename the copy as external.html. And then let's also create a new folder that we call, let's say, style sheets. Okay, now let's open the external file that we just created. Let's remove completely the style. And now what we're going to do right now is to write the style that we were writing in the head in a separate file that we'll place in the style sheet folder. So let's create a new file and let's save it in the style sheet folder as external.css. Basically, the method consists of writing the same exact rules and selectors that we were writing within the style tag in the head, but in a separate file. So nothing changes apart from this. We just remove the style tags and we write the content of the style tags as we were writing it in the head. So we are creating a selector that targets all of the paragraphs in the document with only one single declaration in the declaration block that says that we want to color those paragraphs in red. So we save. Now if we go to the folder and we open our external HTML, nothing seems to be changed. The text is black. And the text is black for a reason, because we have created the CSS file containing the rule to target the paragraph, but we didn't associate the CSS to any document. So our external HTML doesn't contain any reference to that external resource. So we cannot, of course, do anything without it. So we need a new tag for this. Within the head, we use the tag link. Link does exactly what is implied. It allows us to link a document, a style sheet generally, within this document. Using the href attribute, we can specify a URL that can be an external URL or a relative one. In this case, we are going to use a relative URL because the file that we are going to link in the document is present in the local machine. So the external CSS file that we want to link is present within the style sheets folder. So we can write the URL in this way. Style sheets external CSS. Now, before closing the link, it is important to add another attribute, that is rel. The rel attributes basically define the type of relationship that this link has with this document. It can take multiple values. The most widely used one is style sheet, that tells the browser that we are going to fetch a style sheet. So the browser will fetch the style sheet when it reads this line and will parse its content. So let's save the file, go back to our browser and refresh. And we have our text in red. And we see exactly what we were seeing before. The only difference is that now the styles doesn't come from the head, but comes from an external resource. And by the way, if we go to the network tab, we can also see what the browser did in order to parse the entire document. He loaded the HTML file, and when parsing the HTML file and seeing that there was a link referencing an external file, he also loaded that file and applied its style to the document.